rather gruesome, according to the reports from these individuals, rather gruesome treatment. So again, we have to ask ourselves, what in the world is going on here? Well, recently we've heard something about an event, again, that allegedly happened in the early 40s called the Roswell incident. Now, the Roswell incident is interesting in that they claim that a UFO crashed near the small town of Roswell, New Mexico. Now, my first question would be, now if these beings are so advanced and their technology is so terrific that they can travel thousands or millions or billions of light years, or even, let's say, if they're time machines, why in the world would they crash? You know, were they not changing their oil or what? I mean, but that was the first question I had. Why were they crashing? That didn't make any sense. And plus, all of the crashes that were reported in approximately the same area around Roswell. There was one in Socorro and one in Corona. Well, the Roswell incident gave rise to a lot of rumors and a lot of mythology. Originally, the personnel public affairs officer, Jesse Marcel, reported that it was a UFO that crashed. I think what happened as he began to talk to his superiors, they thought, well, maybe it wasn't such a good idea to tell people this was a UFO, because there was already beginning to be some hysteria about the UFO phenomenon. So they said it was a weather balloon. Now, actually, that was a partial truth. 2 years ago, Stephen Schiff, governor of New Mexico, commissioned a study of the Roswell incident. They got all of the documents, the GAO did, General Accounting Office, got all the documents from the Department of Defense, and what they found was this. It indeed was a balloon, but the balloon was going to be used or designed as a high-altitude surveillance system to spy on the Russians. Now, I think they left one thing out. Well, apparently something went wrong and the balloon went down. And there may or may not have been human beings aboard. My opinion is there probably was a live crew. Now, some gentleman just brought a paper to me a minute ago about in USA Today. It said something about that there were dummies in there. Because there were a lot of people who said when they went to the crash site, they saw what they claimed were aliens, were small bodies. In fact, they said that they got 3-foot caskets or 3-foot body bags to put the remains of these creatures in. My research suggests that what happened was that they were dealing with nuclear power. About 1947, we started dealing with small nuclear reactors to power submarines, to power ships, and they were experimenting with this nuclear power to power aircraft. And I think something went wrong. Either it was a core meltdown or something happened, and basically if there were humans aboard, they were immediately microwaved down to little crispy critters. And so maybe that's what happened, and the pod crashed, the balloon crashed, these people went out there, saw these bodies, and the rumors just started flying. But anyway, this has developed into a mythology now that has reached epidemic proportions. I mean, almost everybody knows about Roswell. There's been probably 15 or 20 books now written on Roswell. But my opinion, again, is that the Roswell incident was nothing more. Maybe this was one time the government was actually telling the truth. But this is what we've gotten out of it. Does anybody recognize this fella? Well, this was the alien autopsy that Fox recently showed on television to the world. Let me tell you the real story about this. This is the honest to goodness story. I was peripherally involved in this project. In November of 1993, I was approached by two individuals who are very prominent in the UFO scene. And they asked me if I would like to participate in a project. And I said, well, specifically, what is the project, the nature of the project? And they said, well, we're trying to buy a body, a non-human body. And I said, what do you mean by non-human? Is it alien? They said, well, not exactly, but it's not genetically human. And I said, well, was it from here? Is it from here? And they said, yes. I said, where are you getting it from? They said, the Russians. How much? $1 million. So what they were trying to do is to get a group of people together to form a limited partnership to buy this body. And the question that was posed to me, how could we best present this to the American public to make it convincing that this was a real alien body? Now, I didn't mention autopsy. I just said, well, I suppose you would film something and put it on television, on national television. Well, I guess maybe that was the seed of the idea, and they thought maybe an autopsy would be the best way to do it. Now, a fellow by the name of Ray Santilli over in England, who has a production company called Merlin Productions, bought the rights to produce the alien autopsy film. It was produced by a Japanese, to my knowledge, it was produced by a Japanese film company. They were given the contract to produce it. It was sold to Fox for $8 million, and hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of tapes were made of this autopsy and sold, and the residuals were given back to the limited partnership. It would have only cost me $50,000 to participate, but that $50,000 would have been worth about $500,000. I would have gotten 10 times back on my money. But I saw this as a moral, unethical, unconscionable deception. But there was more to it than just that. That they are scripting these ideas about aliens and programming this information into our minds. And today you can ask just about any young person, say under the age of 15, do aliens exist? And they'll say, oh yeah, it's like a matter of fact. They honestly believe that there are aliens here because they've seen so much of this stuff. I have one friend who told me he bought this thing for his kids, and his kids watch this thing like 30 times. And they're just completely hypnotized by it. Well, what was this? What is this thing here? Well, back in the 50s, the Russians and the Americans both commissioned a genetics program to develop a, quote, radiation-resistant human being. And they were manipulating genetics back then. And the Russians weren't very successful. I don't believe we were either, except I don't know what we did with ours, but they put theirs in lockers and froze them. And they're selling them now, if anybody wants to buy one. But apparently it is a genetic mutation. It's female. That's very obvious. It has all the standard characteristics of a human form, a humanoid form. I guess if you really stretch the imagination, you could say, yeah, that kind of looks like an alien, but I've seen a lot of people that look like aliens. If you look at the lesions on the leg, and again, I apologize for the quality of the transparency, but if you look at the lesions on the leg, this is very characteristic of a diabetic condition. And my guess, and again, people with genetic problems usually have diabetic conditions. I think it probably had a diabetic condition and died. And my guess, the age of death